Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful for You channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The sprawling, sun-drenched landscape of Los Angeles, a city built upon dreams and deceptions, provides the perpetually shimmering backdrop for the relentless emotional tempest that is the lives of the Forresters, the Logans, the Spencers, and all those irrevocably entangled in their gilded orbits, as the week of November 24th to 28th, 2025, unfurls with a particularly potent blend of long-simmering secrets poised to erupt into the open and devastating betrayals threatening to irrevocably shatter the very foundations of trust and family that these powerful dynasties have struggled to maintain, a week that promises to be a pivotal turning point in numerous sagas, beginning with the utterly precarious situation of Steffy Forrester, who finds herself trapped in a nightmarish dilemma, torn between her fierce, maternal instincts to protect her children and the integrity of her hard-won marriage to the man she loves, John Finnegan, a man whose own moral compass is being severely tested by the re-emergence of his biological mother, the brilliantly unhinged Sheila Carter, a woman whose name alone is enough to send shivers down the spines of everyone from the boardroom of Forrester Creations to the waitstaff at Il Giardino, for Steffy possesses a truth so explosive, so dangerously incendiary, that its mere existence could reduce her world to ashes, that being the clandestine knowledge that it was not, in fact, Finn who miraculously saved Sheila from a grim fate in that dark alley but rather the brooding, perpetually tormented Liam Spencer, a man whose own life is a tangled web of conflicting loyalties and romantic misadventures, and Steffy's possession of this secret creates an almost unbearable tension, a sword of Damocles hanging by the most fragile of threads over her head, as every tender moment she shares with Finn, every reassuring smile he offers her, is shadowed by the gnawing guilt of her omission, a lie of silence that feels increasingly like a betrayal of the very open-hearted honesty upon which they rebuilt their relationship after the last great crisis that threatened to tear them apart, and this internal conflict is magnified exponentially by Sheila's newfound and deeply unsettling presence in their lives, a presence that Finn, in his boundless capacity for forgiveness and his deep-seated need for a complete family unit, seems determined to normalize, inviting the viper into their nest under the misguided belief that she has truly changed. That the leopard has, at long last, changed its spots, a notion that Steffy, with every fiber of her being, knows to be a dangerous fantasy, for she has looked into the abyss of Sheila's eyes and seen the bottomless chaos that resides there, and she knows that it is only a matter of time before that chaos erupts once more, destroying everything in its path, a path that leads directly to her doorstep, to her children, Hayes and Kelly, and this maternal fear is the engine driving her desperate secrecy, a flawed but understandable attempt to build a fortified wall between the sanctuary of her home and the hurricane that is Sheila, yet she cannot see that every day this secret remains buried, it gains power, festering and growing in the dark, and its eventual emergence, which feels less like a possibility and more like an inevitability as the week progresses, will be all the more catastrophic for having been suppressed, potentially causing Finn to question not only her recent actions, but the very bedrock of their partnership, wondering if she ever truly trusted him to handle the truth, to stand by her side against any threat, even one that shares his DNA. Simultaneously, in the other great powerhouse marriage of Los Angeles, that of Hope Logan and Thomas Forrester, a relationship forged in the fires of obsession, manipulation, redemption, and ultimately, a seemingly unshakable love, a new and insidious threat begins to coalesce, one that does not announce itself with the theatrical menace of a Sheila Carter but rather slinks in on cat's feet, wearing the benign mask of concern and creative collaboration, as the ambitious and perceptive Xander Avant, now deeply embedded within the Hope for the Future team, continues to sharpen his knives, having never fully relinquished his deeply held conviction that Thomas is a dangerous force, a man capable of unspeakable acts, a belief cemented by the long-buried secret of Emma Barber's death, a tragic accident that Xander will always believe was something far more sinister, and with Thomas now enjoying a level of happiness and stability he has never known, married to the woman he has long viewed as his destiny and acting as a loving father to Douglas, Xander watches this domestic bliss with a deeply skeptical eye, seeing not a reformed man but a master manipulator who has finally perfected his act, and he begins a subtle, calculated campaign to plant seeds of doubt in the one mind that matters most, Hope's, using his position and their professional intimacy to make seemingly offhand comments, to ask questions framed as concern for her well-being, to gently remind her of Thomas's long and well-documented history of instability and fixation, a history that Hope, in her current state of marital contentment, has worked tirelessly to compartmentalize and view as a painful but closed chapter, yet Xander's whispers, delivered with the precision of a psychological surgeon, begin to work their poison, finding fertile ground in the small, hidden corners of Hope's mind where the ghosts of the past still linger, the memory of the mannequin, the gaslighting, the emotional manipulation. All of it, and as Thomas, in his genuine and earnest devotion, pushes for them to expand their family, to have a child of their own, a beautiful dream that represents the ultimate symbol of their moving forward, he remains blissfully unaware that Xander is quietly, methodically trying to resurrect the ghosts of his past, aiming to shatter the very trust that makes such a future possible, forcing Hope into an agonizing position where she must choose between the tangible, loving man her husband is today and the terrifying specter of the man he once was, a choice that becomes all the more torturous as Xander, driven by his self-righteous belief that he is the only one who can see the truth, begins to escalate his efforts, perhaps even seeking out unlikely allies or stumbling upon new fragments of information related to that fateful night Emma died, ensuring that the past is far from buried and is, in fact, a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate the very foundation of Thope. Meanwhile, the corporate world of Forrester Creations becomes a new battlefield, a realm of shifting alliances and ruthless power plays, where Ridge Forrester, the patriarch whose brooding intensity is as much a part of the company's identity as the iconic FC logo, finds his authority and his vision for the family legacy being challenged from within his own circle, as Brooke Logan, the bridge to his soul for so many years, now stands somewhat apart, their relationship having evolved into a complex, sometimes strained, but enduring connection, and she watches with a critical eye as Ridge makes decisions that she deems questionable, particularly concerning their children and the future leadership of the company, while Eric Forrester, the venerable founder, though having faced his own mortality scare, is not content to simply fade into the background as a figurehead. His creative spirit and his desire to leave one last, magnificent mark on the fashion world burning as brightly as ever, leading to a potential clash of egos and aesthetics between the old guard and the new, a conflict that is expertly exploited by the eternally ambitious and cunning Carter Walton, who, despite his role as a voice of reason and a loyal confidant, has his own ambitions and his own complicated history with the Forrester family, and he may find himself playing a dangerous game of chess, aligning with one faction against another in a bid to secure his own position and influence, a political maneuvering that is further complicated by the presence of Katie Logan, whose own heart has been intertwined with Carter's in a frustrating dance of near misses and unresolved feelings, and she observes his actions with a mixture of personal concern and sharp analytical skill, understanding the high-stakes game being played in the hallowed halls of Forrester Creations, where a single boardroom vote or a leaked design can alter the balance of power for a generation, a pressure cooker environment where personal grievances are often weaponized for corporate gain and where the line between family and business is perpetually blurred, creating a volatile mix that is ready to ignite at the slightest spark. And weaving through all these high-stakes dramas are the ever-present figures of Lee Finnegan, who watches her son Finn's reconciliation with Sheila with a horror that is both professional and deeply maternal, knowing the destructive pathology of Sheila Carter better than almost anyone, and she may be pushed to take drastic, perhaps even ethically questionable, measures to sever that bond for good, seeing it as a medical and moral imperative, while Poppy Nozawa, with her mysterious past and sudden integration into this world, continues to stir the pot, her presence alone causing ripples that affect her daughter, Luna, whose own relationship with R.J. Forrester is tested by the lingering shadow of Zen's attraction and the secrets her mother carries, secrets that may yet come to light with devastating consequences, revealing a history that connects to the core families in ways no one could have anticipated, and Bill Spencer, Dollar Bill, watches all this from the sleek confines of Spencer Publications, a king in his own domain, but a man forever drawn into the Forrester-Logan vortex, whether through his undying, complex love for Brooke, his rivalry with Ridge, or his connection to his son, Liam, whose own life is a testament to the chaotic interplay of these families. And as Liam grapples with the secret he shares with Steffy and the lingering what-ifs regarding Hope, he remains a pivotal, If often reactive, force in the narrative, a man forever standing at a crossroads, his heart perpetually divided, his moral certainty constantly challenged. Thus, the week of November 24th to 28th, 2025, on The Bold and the Beautiful, is not merely a collection of isolated events but a meticulously orchestrated symphony of impending doom, where the central theme is the terrifying fragility of truth and the devastating cost of love in a world where every heart is a battleground, every secret a loaded gun, and every confession has the power to either redeem or destroy, setting the stage for a climactic reckoning that will leave no life untouched and redefine the very meaning of family, loyalty, and survival in the glittering, cutthroat world of Los Angeles high fashion and even higher drama. Of course, building upon the intricate tapestry of the previous narrative, the week of November 24th to 28th, 2025, on The Bold and the Beautiful plunges even deeper into the psychological and emotional quagmires of its characters, where every whispered confidence, every lingering glance, and every suppressed memory acts as a kind of emotional tectonic plate, shifting and grinding against the others, building up an immense pressure that promises a seismic event capable of fracturing the very geography of their relationships, a pressure that is palpably felt in the heightened, almost theatrical, atmosphere of the Forrester Creations design office, where the elegant fabrics and sleek lines of the latest collection stand in stark contrast to the raw, unraveling human emotions on display, particularly for Hope Logan, who finds herself trapped in a cruel echo chamber of her own making, where Xander Avant's carefully calibrated insinuations about Thomas's past begin to fuse with her own deepest, most private anxieties, creating a distorted funhouse mirror version of her husband, a man whose every gesture of affection, whether it's a tender touch on her shoulder as she reviews a new sketch or his enthusiastic planning for their future child, now feels potentially double-edged, layered with a subtext she cannot unsee, a phenomenon psychologists would call confirmation bias, where she subconsciously begins to seek out and magnify the smallest, most insignificant details that could be construed as evidence of his backsliding, such as a moment of quiet intensity when he's working on a design, which she once found attractive and now views as potentially ominous, or a harmless question about her schedule that she now interprets as a need for control, this internal corrosion of trust being expertly facilitated by Xander, who, in a masterstroke of manipulation, positions himself not as an accuser but as her sole, true confidant, the only one brave enough to speak the difficult truth that everyone else, from her mother Brooke to even her own stepfather Ridge, seems willfully blind to in their collective desire to believe in Thomas's redemption, a narrative that Xander is determined to expose as a collective delusion, and he may even strategically unearth a forgotten relic from the past, perhaps a photograph of Emma, or a reference to the Hope mannequin, not as a direct accusation, but as a seemingly nostalgic, sorrowful reminder of how far we've all come, a tactic designed to trigger Hope's PTSD without leaving any fingerprints, forcing her into a state of constant, low-grade alarm that begins to manifest in her interactions with Thomas, making her distant during intimate moments, sharp and defensive over minor disagreements, and hypervigilant around their son Douglas, whose own unwavering love for his father creates another layer of conflict within her, as she fears that protecting her son might mean dismantling the family unit he so clearly adores, a torturous paradox that leaves her feeling isolated and paralyzed, a queen on a chessboard being subtly moved by a player she doesn't even realize is in the game. This domestic Cold War at the Logan mansion runs on a parallel, collision course with the escalating crisis at the Cliff House, where Steffy Forrester's policy of strategic secrecy is becoming increasingly untenable, strained to its breaking point by Sheila Carter's relentless and unnervingly effective campaign of grandmotherly charm, a performance so convincing that it even seems to be swaying the ever-skeptical Finn, who, in a heartbreaking scene of dramatic irony, praises his wife's strength and understanding in tolerating his efforts to build a relationship with his biological mother, little knowing that every word of his gratitude drives the shard of Steffy's secret deeper into her conscience, making her feel like a fraud in her own home, a feeling that is compounded when Sheila, in a moment of breathtaking audacity, presents a gift for Hayes, something personal and thoughtful that transcends her usual grandiose gestures, a gift that forces Steffy into the impossible position of either rejecting it and appearing cruel and unreasonable in front of her husband, or accepting it and allowing a token from a known murderer to cross the sacred threshold of her child's nursery, a symbolic contamination of her sanctuary, and it is in this moment of peak tension, as Steffy's hand hovers over the innocuous-looking wrapped box, her face a mask of polite terror, that Finn, observant and concerned, notices the profound distress in her eyes, a distress that goes far beyond simple dislike and veers into something resembling pure dread, prompting him to later question her, not with accusation but with deep concern, asking, "Steffy, what is it you're so afraid of? What aren't you telling me?" A question that hangs in the air between them, a direct challenge to the wall of silence she has built, and her response, whether it's a tearful evasion or a partial confession, will set the trajectory for the inevitable explosion, an explosion that will almost certainly be triggered by Liam Spencer, the secret's other bearer, who is himself buckling under the weight of his knowledge, watching the slow-motion car crash of Steffy's marriage from the sidelines, his own sense of chivalry and his complicated history with her compelling him to act, perhaps by confronting Finn directly in a misguided attempt to save Steffy from a predicament he feels partially responsible for creating, a confrontation that would be catastrophic, as it would frame Steffy and Liam as co-conspirators, reviving all the old ghosts of steam and making Finn feel like the outsider in his own marriage, thereby fulfilling Steffy's worst fear of driving him directly into Sheila's waiting, sympathetic arms. Meanwhile, the corporate intrigue at Forrester Creations reaches a fever pitch, moving beyond mere boardroom disagreements and into the realm of corporate espionage and intellectual property theft, as the ideological clash between Ridge's commercially driven, minimalist vision for the upcoming collection and Eric's desire for one last, grand, opulent couture legacy creates a schism that is exploited by a third party, perhaps the newly resurgent Spectre Fashions, now under the management of a shrewd and ruthless new owner who uses an inside contact, a disgruntled employee or a compromised ally like Zend, who feels overlooked and underappreciated, to leak key elements of Eric's designs, creating a race against time that forces Ridge and Eric into an uneasy, pressurized alliance to save the company's reputation, a crisis that inadvertently shines a spotlight on Carter Walton and his true allegiances, as he is forced to make a choice between his professional duty to the company's bottom line, which aligns with Ridge's pragmatic approach, and his personal loyalty and deep respect for Eric, the man who gave him his chance and whom he views as a father figure, a decision that is closely watched by Katie Logan, whose own heart aches to see the noble Carter in such a moral quandary, and she may find herself drawn back into his orbit, not as a romantic partner initially, but as a strategic ally and confidant, their shared history and mutual respect forming the basis of a powerful partnership that could ultimately reshape the power structure within the company, all while Brooke, ever the matriarch, attempts to play peacemaker between her husband and her former husband, her unique position giving her insight into both men's souls, but her efforts are complicated by her own biases and her fierce protectiveness over Hope, whose deteriorating state of mind she begins to notice, pulling her focus from the corporate war to the more intimate, but equally devastating, war for her daughter's sanity. This intricate web of conflict is further tangled by the subplots simmering on the back burners, which are now coming to a rolling boil, as Lee Finnegan, armed with her medical expertise and a mother's fury, begins to compile a damning dossier on Sheila's psychological history, possibly even contacting former victims or colleagues from her days at the hospital, seeking any piece of evidence that could legally or professionally dismantle Sheila's carefully constructed facade of normalcy, a dangerous game that could provoke the notoriously volatile Sheila into a preemptive strike, while Poppy Nozawa's mysterious past begins to leak out at the worst possible moment, perhaps through a forgotten acquaintance from her life before Los Angeles who shows up at the worst possible moment, revealing a connection to one of the core families that throws Luna's paternity into a new, shocking light, directly impacting her relationship with RJ and causing a ripple effect that embarrasses and destabilizes the entire Forrester clan, and Bill Spencer, seeing the chaos unfolding from his penthouse perch, may decide that this is the perfect moment to reassert his influence, perhaps by making a predatory business move on a vulnerable Forrester Creations or by inserting himself into the Steffy Finn Sheila triangle, not out of altruism, but because he sees an opportunity to settle old scores with Ridge or to position himself as the powerful savior, a role he relishes. Thus, the week evolves from a slow burn into a raging firestorm, where the central theme becomes the catastrophic failure of communication and the poisonous nature of secrets, where Steffy's secret about Liam's heroism and Hope's secret doubts about Thomas's sanity act as twin viruses, corrupting their respective marriages from within, while the corporate secret of the leaked designs threatens the family's legacy from without, and the historical secrets of Poppy and Sheila threaten to rewrite the very history of these families, creating a perfect storm of betrayal, fear, and desperate action that ensures the final moments of the week will leave viewers breathless, with at least one character facing a life-altering decision, another discovering a truth they were never meant to know, and a third lying bloodied and broken, either physically or emotionally, on the cold, beautiful marble floor of a world that is as treacherous as it is glamorous.